In the wake of several near collisions at U.S. airports, the FAA hosted a safety summit to address the string of close calls.
NTSB officials are also reviewing potential communication, situational awareness training, and staffing level issues that could be contributing factors. There have been 7 recent near collisions, including one that happened last week in Virginia at a very busy airport. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg spoke at the summit and was clear about his concerns.
We are particularly concerned because we have seen an uptick in serious close calls that we must address together. Initial information suggests that more mistakes than usual are happening across the system, on runways, at gates when planes are pushing back, in control towers, and on flight decks.
Joining us now is CBS News senior transportation and national correspondent Kris Van Cleave. So, Kris, did we learn why these near collisions continue to happen?
Well, I think if you're looking at each incident, the causes will be a little bit different, and of course, they're all under investigation. So we'll get final reports from the NTSB and the FAA in the weeks to come. But you did start to hear some commonality amongst the various stakeholders, from pilots to air traffic controllers to airports and the trade group representing the airlines. Coming out of the pandemic, you had that period where the airlines business almost went to zero. Many airlines offered buyouts to pilots, for example. So you had senior pilots take early retirement packages. You have air traffic control staffing at a point lower than it's been in at least 10 years. And as hiring has ramped up, you have qualified but not necessarily veteran pilots and controllers going into new jobs, perhaps at new airlines, or once they were a first officer, now they're a captain. You have a lot of change that is churning through the system. You have a training backlog at some of the airlines. So we heard sort of again and again that resources, the FAA needing more resources, more ability to hire and to add technology like that would alert controllers to a runway incursion, a system that exists today, but is only in place at about 40 U.S. airports, and there are about 400 U.S. airports, as well as this idea of sort of almost growing pains coming out of the pandemic at a time when demand for flying has soared, so the system is being stretched as being a combination of things that is starting to trip circuit breakers, red flags, if you will, that there are some issues here. What I think is important is you've got the FAA, the industry coming together to talk about problems when they're incidents, not accidents. Incidents mean something nearly happened, as opposed to an accident where something did happen. So there is an effort here to try to be proactive and address things before these red flags become an accident.
So on that note, Kris, as you mentioned, the system is so stretched. Some of these changes that you're bringing up potentially take a lot of time, especially if you're talking about staffing up the FAA, training those people, training these pilots, getting them all the exposure. Are they concerned about all these near misses or these incidents turning into accidents in any cases while they're trying to make these changes?
Well, I think there's always concern. They say that the absence of an accident does not necessarily tell you that there's a presence of safety. You have to treat safety as an everyday, that there's a risk every day, and to stay attuned to that. So certainly, as you look at an aviation system that is experiencing an unparalleled period of safety, complacency becomes one of the challenges. Everybody continues to insist that the aviation system is safe and that it is safe to fly, and it is. But one of the things the industry has to be conscious of is saying that it's safe can lull people into a false sense of security. People on that flight line that day have to be attentive. So is there concern? There's always concern that something could happen. That's why you build a lot of redundancy into the system, so that you might trip one of those concerns, but that then there's another layer that steps in. And we have so far seen that play out time and again. It's important to note that runway incursions happen every year. Typically, there are 12 to 16 or so that are classified as serious. What's concerning here is you've seen 6 or 7 of those in 3 months. So if that was a trend that were to continue all year, that would be a noticeable uptake in the number of those. But runway incursions have been an issue for years. There's technology, for example, that can be installed in airplanes or at airports that can address some of that. It's expensive, and that's been headwinds to that system being taken on. The NTSB has made 7 recommendations around runway incursions. None have been fully adopted. It's certainly a point of frustration for the safety board. But you do have a robust safety culture in the U.S. around aviation, or you wouldn't see the track record you have seen. So there are red flags. It does not mean that you should be concerned getting on an airplane. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow night. It's not a concern to me as to whether or not we'll safely take off. I take that as a guarantee.
Right, and that's something that we continue to hear from officials, that when you look at the overall record, despite the headlines sometimes and how alarming it can be, certainly when you look at the overall totality of the aviation picture in the U.S., it is safe. Kris Van Cleave, Kris, thank you.